In this video, we will cover everything there is to know about Topaz and Numby, like her kit, her relic sets, LightCones, and team compositions. If you enjoy this type of content, hit the like and subscribe button for more content. That being said, let's talk about Topaz and Numby. Honestly, her stats are not really that impressive, even for a hunt character. Her most notable stat is her speed, sitting at 110, which makes it very easy to break the 135 speed threshold, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But across the board, she has very mid stats. Starting off with her kit, her basic attack lands a single hit fire damage that is equal to 100% of her attack to one target, and with traces upgraded, this will count as a follow-up attack. Her skill is going to mark a target with proof of death, then is going to launch an attack that deals 150% damage to the enemy and is going to count also as a follow-up attack. Enemies with the proof of death marking will receive a 50% increased damage from all follow-up attack sources, not necessarily just Topaz and Numby. These debuff can also be applied to only one enemy at a time, and if no enemy has proof of death, Topaz, whenever she takes a turn, she will randomly pick one enemy and give her the proof of death. This means that you don't have to use any skill points to mark an enemy with proof of death, enabling her kit. If you get lucky enough at the start of battle and she marks the enemy you want to mark anyway, you can get away with not using her skill at all, making her very skill point positive. The ultimate puts Numby in a windfall bonanza state. During this state, Numby will increase its damage multiplier by 150% and increases crit damage by 25%. Additionally, whenever an enemy with proof of death is hit by any ally, Numby will advance itself forward by 50%. Numby can only advance itself forward up to a total of 2 follow-up attacks using the windfall bonanza state. Challenge pretty much is a description of what Numby brings to the fight. He will have its own action order with 80 speed, and whenever it takes a turn, it will launch a follow-up attack to the enemy marked with proof of death, dealing 150% of Topaz attack in fire damage. Also, whenever the marked enemy takes damage from an ally's follow-up attack, Numby will advance itself forward by 50% as well. This is separate from the bonanza state, because the bonanza state is whenever any enemy hits it. This passive is whenever the enemy is hit with a follow-up attack. So it is possible that Numby can advance itself 100% of the bar if you hit an enemy with a follow-up attack while in the bonanza state. And then as a little bonus, Numby deals an extra 15% damage to enemies that are weak to fire. Topaz and Numby's tech is very unique. It will summon Numby into the overworld, and it will track down treasure chests and trotters around the map in a certain radius. Also, when entering the battle, Topaz will gain 60 energy after Numby's first attack in battle, pretty much mitigating her first weakness, because one of Topaz's weaknesses is her energy regeneration. But with the 60 energy gained after Numby's first attack, once she gets her first ultimate, she can gain more ultimates a little easier. Finally, when defeating enemies in the map, you will gain extra credits up to 10k every day, and in Simulate Universe, you will gain a small amount of cosmic fragments and a tiny chance of getting a random curio in every battle. As far as her talent priority, I would recommend leveling up her talent first, since all her damage comes from Numby, then leveling up her ultimate, followed by her skill, and then lastly her basic attack. On her trace screen, I recommend getting the overdraft trace unlocked as soon as possible, because this will enable her to perform a follow-up attack without using any skill points, making her very skill point positive. Her other trace upgrades increase damage dealt to fire weak enemies by 15% and make Topaz generate 10 energy whenever Numby attacks while in the bonanza state, which she desperately needs. She also gains 19.2 fire damage bonus, 12% crit, and 10% HP from her trace stat bonuses as well. As far as the damage formula as it applies to Topaz and Numby, we have to make the distinction between attacking a non-fire weak and a fire weak enemy, because she does 15% extra damage when attacking a fire weak enemy, and we also have to take into consideration fire resistance and not having fire resistance. Aside from the 15% extra damage given to fire weak enemies, Topaz and Numby will benefit greatly from a crit stats and overall damage multipliers, as well as defense shred. Strata aims to increase her crit rate and crit damage to maximize her DPS as well as her attack. Adding defense shred and damage increase is extremely beneficial, but we will cover that in the team section. Let's talk about her Eidolons really quickly. Her E1 increases her crit damage done by follow-up attacks to enemies with proof of death by up to 50%. This is overall, so E1 affects the proof of death mark and not Topaz herself. So the proof of death mark is going to increase the crit damage received by the wearer of the mark by 50%, not by Topaz and Numby. So it's pretty much crit damage taken essentially. Her E2 regenerates 5 extra energy to Topaz whenever Numby attacks, which, you know, she kind of needs. Her E4 is going to make it to where whenever Numby takes a turn or doesn't attack, Topaz will be advanced 20%, which is really nice. It will make it to where you don't have to worry about speed at all. And then her E6 allows Numby to attack 1 extra time in the bonanza state and also increases the fire penetration rate by 10% when it attacks. E6 is kind of nasty if you can attack 3 times with fire res pen and pretty much doubling her DPS multipliers. 6 Topaz is going to hit like a truck. Now that we talked about everything Topaz and Numby have themselves, let's talk about her builds. Starting off with her relics. Now my main recommendation as of right now is either the 4-piece Firesmith or a combination of a 2-piece Firesmith, 2-piece Musketeer, 2-piece Hackerspace. She benefits from attack percentage increase, fire damage increase, and speed increase. So any combination of those would probably be pretty good. I would personally recommend for Hackerspace and Firesmith. Keep in mind that there may be other better options coming up in the near future. future. So just throw whatever you have on her and then worry about farming her best in slot relics later. Trust me on this. As far as planar sets, as of right now, her best in slot is going to be the Inert Cell Soto or the follow-up attack damage increase. She gives herself 12% crit already, and with the help of some LightCones, including some free-to-play LightCones I will cover later on, you easily can get the 50% activation requirement pretty easy. Aside from that, Space Sealing Station is pretty much the only other option for her, again, for now. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend farming too much for Topaz and Numby's relics right now. I highly recommend waiting at least until the next patch. All right, talking about her main stats, her chest is going to be the crit damage chest is going to be the #1, but if you can't get the crit rate thresholds, the crit rate body is also good. Speed is best in slot because you can get to the 135 threshold and you only need the 25 speed from the boots to get there. Attack percentage boots also work depending on your team. If you're running Asta or if you're running Bronya with high speed, you can just do that instead and that works. But it really just depends on your team and substat rules. Fire Orb is going to be best in slot, but attack percentage will also work. The damage percent drop off is not that much. It's about 5%, so it's not really that much. However, if you have E6, Fire Orb takes the cake because of the fire penetration, so just keep that in mind. As far as rope, I think she needs the energy recharge rope because one of her flaws that I noticed is that she doesn't gain any energy at all from Numby unless Numby is in the bonanza state. Otherwise, an attack percent rope works as well, but I recommend the energy recharge rope just to help her mitigate that little flaw that she has. As far as substat priority, you should prioritize crit damage, crit rate, attack percent, and speed. Honestly, if you get a piece with crit damage, crit rate on it, just go with it. It doesn't really matter. Just go for that one. You can buff up her attack and speed with just Asta, which is free to play. So just as long as the piece has crit damage and crit rate, you should be fine. Try to aim for the 2-to-1 ratio, and then also try to aim for at least 50% so you can activate the Inner Cell Soto. I would say a good mid to late game build for Topaz and Numby would be 70% crit rate, 140 or more crit damage, 2500 attack, and at least 135 speed, which again is very easy to obtain. Onto the LightCone section, obviously her signature is going to be best in slot because it pretty much enhances everything in Topaz's kit. Gains 18% crit rate and her follow-up damage is increased by an extra 30%. Also, when attacking an enemy with a follow-up attack, the LightCone will give the enemy the tame state, in which it will make them take increased crit damage by up to 24%, which is really nice. Yeah, this LightCone is really good for her, but honestly is not really necessary at all. You can get similar damage outputs with non-premium LightCones that we have in the game. Like for instance, another option that I'm going to recommend is going to be the 5-star LightCone from the Herda shop called the Cruising in the Stellar Sea, where there's a really good crit rate increase it offers, as well as the 40% attack buff whenever you kill an enemy. In my opinion, the 4-star LightCone Swordplay is an even better option if you have enough crit rate already, because it is incredibly synergistic with Topaz's kit. You can get a juicy 80% damage increase when attacking the same target when you have it at S5. It really depends on how many Swordplay LightCones you have lying around, but if you have it at S5, S3, S4, it's really nice. You get a really good damage increase. My last recommendation is going to be another 4-star LightCone called Only Silence Remains, because it increases her attack by 32%, and when fighting 2 or fewer enemies, she gets a crit rate increase by 24% at S5. But all in all, I would go for the Swordplay LightCone if I was pulling for her, because I don't think pulling for her signature LightCone is actually worth it. I'd rather get a new character instead. Our team options are in the beginning stages because we really have a few options as of right now that can take full advantage of her follow-up attack enabling kit. One of our most notable teammates is Clara. Obviously, with her follow-up centric playstyle, she can enable Numby's follow-up attack multiple times in a cycle and also take full advantage of Topaz's Proof of Death marking on enemies for big follow-up attack damage. Another sub DPS teammate can be Jing Yuan, pretty much for the same reason. She increases follow-up attack damage dealt to enemies with Proof of Death, but the problem with Jing Yuan and Topaz is Topaz's damage increase only applies to the Lightning Lord. It doesn't apply to Jing Yuan himself, so you're only going to be experiencing the follow-up attack increase when the Lightning Lord strikes. Similarly, you're only going to be pushing up Numby when the Lightning Lord strikes. So the frequency in which you're going to take advantage of that using Jing Yuan is going to be really low compared to Clara. Another sub DPS I can see working with Topaz is going to be Himiko, as she will be triggering a lot of follow-up attacks, which are also AoE, meaning that she will be pushing Numby up every time she activates it because she will be hitting the Proof of Death enemy. Herda also can be really good with Topaz because of the same reason. Her follow-up attacks trigger really frequently and also hit everyone. So she is going to hit the Proof of Death marked enemy every time she triggers it, which is going to boost her follow-up attack damage and also push Numby up in the action advance order. For her supports, Asta would be her best teammate because she provides tons of speed, increases fire damage dealt by allies by 18%, and gives a juicy 70% attack increase. Needless to say, Asta will be Topaz and Numby's best friend. Another great support is going to be Ting Yun for the energy regen, which Topaz really needs if I'm being honest. He also buffs her attack and damage, and depending on Eidolons, she can even buff her speed. My last support option is going to be Bronya because she's Bronya and she's very good with everybody who is not named Clara. Alright, as far as debuffers suppose, obviously Silver Wolf is going to be amazing because she's Silver Wolf, and then also Pela can be good, but I would much rather run 2 buffers instead of Pela if it makes any sense. Now, as far as sustains, you know the drill. FuXuan if you want more offensive approach to sustain, and Luocha for a bit bit more survivability. Later on in the future, we're going to get more abundance characters, so this may change, but for now, the only solo sustain options that we have are Luocha and FuXuan. Maybe Lynx if she's very, very well built, but for the most part, she's going to be FuXuan and Luocha. March 7th is the honorable mention because she also takes advantage of follow-up attacks, but she's not going to be a really good sustain option if you ask me. I'm going to give you a few teams. I think her best team is going to be Topaz, Asta, Clara, and FuXuan. I think Clara taking on all the aggro, FuXuan giving damage reduction to everybody. Clara's not going to take any damage. The team is probably not going to take any damage. FuXuan's going to be healing it, and while at the same time boosting crit rate and crit damage for everybody. If you have E1 FuXuan, I think this team is going to be pretty nasty. You can also swap FuXuan for Luocha and you can have pretty much the same thing, but I think that's probably going to be Topaz's best team as of right now. But you can also run teams like Topaz, Asta, Tingyun, and Sustain. Topaz, this is more of a hyper carry Topaz composition, which is also viable. You can run a 2-element Silver Wolf team with Topaz, Asta, Silver Wolf, and FuXuan. With this team, you will cover literally all your bases. You're going to have damage increase. You're going to have crit rate increase. You're going to have speed, damage, fire damage. You're going to have it all. Defense shred, you're gonna have it all with this team, honestly. This team will be really good to try out, so I'll see if I can make that happen because I'm not pulling for Topaz. But all right, the next team is going to be Topaz, Tingyun, Jinyuan, and FuXuan for the same reasons. FuXuan and Tingyun really help Jinyuan out, and also Topaz is going to be helping Jinyuan out, so I think this team can work really, really well. The only character that needs to use a skill point every turn is going to be Jinyuan, so it's very skill point friendly for the general. Lastly, Topaz, Asta, Himeko, and Sustain is probably going to be a really, really nice team as well. Asta is going to be boosting up Topaz and Himeko's fire damage. Topaz is going to be boosting Himeko's follow-up attack damage, and all we just need is a sustain to make sure nobody dies. These are just a few. Topaz and Numby will get more teams as more characters release that are follow-up attack focused, but for now, this is all we got. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Until next time, guys, see ya.